I used to think life changed with big moments. You know, the dramatic stuff, job offers, hospital visits, weddings, funerals. But sometimes it's the quiet things that shift your world off its axis. A photo album, for instance. A dusty, forgotten photo album buried in a closet I hadn't opened in years. It was a Saturday morning in early April. The house was still, save for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old floorboards. Lisa had taken Emma and Sophie out shopping for spring clothes. I was supposed to be cleaning the garage, but I got sidetracked. Funny how that happens. One minute you're grabbing a broom, the next you're rummaging through a hallway closet you haven't thought about since the Bush administration. That closet was a time capsule. Stacks of old board games missing half their pieces, tangled strings of Christmas lights, a couple of those cheap plastic storage bins filled with God knows what. I was halfway through sorting when I spotted it, a leather-bound photo album wedged between a broken lamp and a box of Sophie's baby toys. I sat down right there on the floor, legs crossed like a kid, and opened it. Most of it was harmless. Lisa at some college party, holding a red Solo cup, eyes gleaming with the reckless joy of youth. Group *TS with friends whose names I didn't know. Spring break photos, beach days, candid selfies before selfies were even a thing. I smiled. She looked so young, so alive. Not that she wasn't now, but different. Then I saw him. Tom. Tall, dark-haired, with that easy, punchable grin. I'd heard his name before. Lisa had mentioned him once or twice, always with a casual shrug. An old college thing. Way back when. Nothing to talk about. That's what she said. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But flipping through those pages, it didn't feel like nothing. There were dozens of photos. Them at a lake house, sitting way too close. Laughing at some inside joke. A selfie of them in bed, fully dressed, but still an asterisk mate in a way that didn't sit right with me. His hand on her knee. Her head on his shoulder. Then I reached that picture. At first glance, it looked like the others. Lisa standing beside Tom, smiling. But not really. Her smile was tight. Forced. And her left hand, was pressed flat against his chest, fingers splayed in a way that seemed deliberate. Almost like she was covering something. Maybe a necklace, a pin, or even God, I don't know, someone else's hand? I stared at that photo for a long time. A ridiculous part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. That my wife was just awkwardly posed. But something about it tugged at me. A tiny, persistent itch. Why was this album stuffed in the back of a closet, anyway? Lisa wasn't the sentimental type, but she wasn't careless either. The albums she cared about were neatly arranged in the living room bookshelf. This one? Buried. Forgotten. Or maybe hidden. When Lisa got back later that afternoon, arms full of shopping bags and half listening to Sophie's story about a super cool store, I waited for the right moment. When the girls went upstairs to unpack, I found her in the kitchen unloading groceries. Hey, Lisa, I said, keeping my tone light. Guess what I found? She looked over her shoulder. The second her eyes landed on the album in my hands, something in her face shifted. It was quick, maybe half a second, but I caught it. A flicker of tension, her mouth pressing into a thin line before curving up again. Wow, she said, walking over to me. Blast from the past. Where was that hiding? Back of the hallway closet. Behind Sophie's old toys. She laughed softly, a little too soft. Figures. That thing's ancient. Haven't seen it in years. I flipped it open to the photo of her and Tom. You and Tom looked pretty close back then. Yeah, she said, glancing at the picture. Her tone was casual, but I noticed her hands tightening around a bag of flour. We were friends. Dated for a bit in college. Nothing serious. She said it like she was reciting from a script. Polished. Rehearsed. Not like Lisa. I nodded, pretending to accept it. But in that moment, something changed. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, her tone, her body language, the too perfect dismissal. All I knew was that it didn't sit right. Not with me. And once you notice something's off, you can't unnotice it. For the rest of the day, I kept catching myself watching her. The way she avoided looking directly at the album after that. The way she brushed off my questions about college with vague generalities. Oh, you know, it was forever ago. Just parties and bad decisions. She was smooth, I'll give her that. But not quite smooth enough. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat alone in the living room. The album was still on the coffee table. I found myself flipping back to that picture. Over and over again. Analyzing every inch like it held the key to a riddle I didn't know I was supposed to solve. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then again, instincts don't just show up for no reason. And my gut was telling me there was more to this. I remembered once, years ago, when Lisa and I were just dating, she told me that she hated liars more than anything. If you ever lie to me, Mike, even a little white lie, I'll know. I can smell it from a mile away. I used to admire that about her. But now, sitting there with that album in my lap, I couldn't help but wonder, had she been lying to me all along? Or was this just old baggage she never bothered to unpack? That's the thing about trust. It's not built on grand gestures. It's in the small details. The offhand comments. The things you don't say. And suddenly there was a crack in ours. A small one, barely noticeable to anyone else. But to me, it felt like the first domino tipping over. I didn't confront her again that night. I told myself it was pointless. It was one photo. One weird reaction. No point in stirring the pot. But deep down I knew this wasn't going away. That little seed of doubt had been planted. And whether I liked it or not, it was going to grow. Ever notice how once you start doubting someone, everything they do starts to look suspicious? That's where I was with Lisa. After finding that photo album, I tried to let it go. I really did. Told myself it was ancient history. Tom was her past, I was her present. But that seed of doubt? It didn't just sit there quietly. It grew roots, wrapped itself around my thoughts like ivy. And Lisa wasn't making it easy to ignore. At first, it was little things. Her phone, for one. Lisa was never secretive about her phone. She used to leave it everywhere, on the kitchen counter, by the bathroom sink, sometimes even in the fridge, don't ask. But now, that phone was glued to her. Always face down. Always on silent. One night, we were watching a movie, something light, romantic, one of those old classics she usually loved. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. Just once. A soft little vibration. But Lisa flinched like it had electrocuted her. She grabbed it, glanced at the screen, and then that pause. The kind where you're deciding whether to share something or hide it. She chose to hide it. Just slipped the phone into her pocket and said nothing. Work? I asked casually, though my heart was already beating faster. Yeah, just some project stuff. They never stop bothering me, she said, waving it off. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. But that pause, that moment of hesitation was louder than her words. Then there were the girls' weekends. Lisa had always enjoyed her occasional getaways with friends. A spa trip here, a wine tasting there. But lately, they'd become more frequent. And vaguer. We're just going to unwind, she'd say, brushing off my questions. You know how crazy work has been. I need this. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something felt off. Like that time she packed a silk nightgown for a hiking weekend. Or when she came back from a supposed spa trip with a sunburn even though the weather reports showed rain the entire weekend. Still, I didn't push. Not yet. But the worst was the slip-up. It was a Thursday evening, not long after I found the album. I was getting ready for a work conference, packing my usual black suit, double-checking my itinerary. Lisa was in the kitchen, making dinner. I called out from the bedroom asking if she'd seen my cufflinks. Check the top drawer, Tom, she shouted back. Silence. I froze. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing there, wooden spoon in hand, eyes wide. For a moment, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I mean, Mike, she said quickly, laughing in that high-pitched, fake way. Oh my God, what was that? Brain glitch. Too much multitasking. I chuckled. Tried to play it cool. But inside, it felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I wanted to believe it was nothing. A slip of the tongue. But I couldn't unhear it. Couldn't shake the way her face had gone pale when she said his name. Tom. The guy from the album. The guy who, supposedly, hadn't mattered. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind playing tricks on me. Was it possible she still talked to him? Still thought about him? Or worse, was seeing him again? I started noticing patterns. The work calls she took on the back porch, always with the same hushed tone. The sudden increase in evening jogs, even though she hated running. The way she'd jump in the shower the moment she got home, as if washing off something or someone. I wasn't proud of it, but I started checking her social media. Harmless, right? Except it wasn't. Lisa's posts were as curated as ever: family dinners, inspirational quotes, pictures of our daughters. But comments caught my eye. Tom W. would occasionally like her posts. Subtle. No comments, just likes. Tom W. Could it be him? Or was it just a coincidence? I thought about asking her. Just coming out and saying, "Are you in touch with Tom?" But I knew how that would go. She'd brush it off. Gaslight me. Make me feel like the paranoid husband. So instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. One night, Lisa was in the shower after another girls' night. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Just a preview, no full message, but it was enough. Tom. Had a great time today. Can't wait for the next one. I swear my heart stopped. By the time she got out of the shower, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. "Everything okay?" she asked, toweling her hair. "Yeah. Long day." I lied. Because what was I going to say? "Hey, Lisa, your old college thing just texted you that he had a great time today?" That would go down well, right? But at that moment, it was no longer a seed of doubt. It was a goddamn oak tree. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started piecing things together, looking for patterns, watching her like an outsider. Her routines, her excuses, her subtle shifts in behavior. I thought about the girls, Emma and Sophie. How would they see this? Did they notice, too? Kids are more perceptive than we give them credit for. Sometimes I catch Emma giving Lisa a strange look, like she knew something wasn't right. But the worst part wasn't the suspicion. It was the knowing. Deep down, I already knew. The woman I married was hiding something from me. And no matter how much I wanted to deny it, the truth was creeping closer. The final straw came when I mentioned our anniversary. 15 years next month, I said one evening, trying to sound upbeat. "We should do something special." Lisa barely looked up from her phone. "Sure, Mike. Whatever you want." That was it. No excitement. No plans. Just a perfunctory response, like I'd reminded her to buy milk. Something was broken. Whether it was fixable, I didn't know. But I was done pretending. That night, after Lisa went to bed, I sat alone in my office, staring at the photo album again. That same damn picture. Her hand hiding something, just like she was hiding something now. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a slow, suffocating confirmation. And I wasn't going to sit back and wait for the truth to fall into my lap. There's a moment when suspicion turns into certainty. It's not always some dramatic revelation. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, a slow, creeping realization that clicks into place until you can't deny it anymore. That moment came for me on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Lisa said she was working late. A team-building event, she called it. Funny how those kept popping up lately. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, barely making eye contact. The girls were at a sleepover, so it was just me and the silence of the house. I sat there for a while, staring at my cold coffee, replaying everything in my head. The phone calls, the slip-up with Tom's name, the text I wasn't supposed to see. My gut was screaming, but part of me still clung to the hope that I was wrong. That maybe, somehow, this was all a misunderstanding. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. Lisa had been careful. She was smart. Most messages were gone, deleted, probably. But she'd forgotten one thing, the cloud. Our devices were synced for years, a convenience that now worked in my favor. Through my laptop, I found old backups, photos, messages, bits and pieces of conversations that hadn't fully vanished. And there it was, plain as day. Tom. Last weekend was perfect. Can't believe we pulled it off again. Lisa, me neither. Felt like old times. I've missed this more than I thought. There wasn't much else. No explicit details. But they didn't need to be. The subtext was enough. This wasn't casual. This wasn't harmless. This was betrayal. I scrolled further, my stomach twisting tighter with every message. Tom. Are we still on for the cabin next month? I booked the same place. You, me, no distractions. Just like before. Lisa. Can't wait. I'll figure out an excuse. An excuse. That's what I had become. An obstacle to be maneuvered around. I sat back, the weight of it all crashing down on me. My mind flashed back to our wedding day. Lisa in that simple white dress, smiling at me like I was the only man in the world. The promises we made. The life we built. And now, she was planning weekend getaways with an ex-boyfriend while weaving lies around me like a spider spins a web. I didn't confront her that night. Not immediately. Instead, I reached out to an old acquaintance, Jake, a private investigator I'd met through work. We weren't close, but he was reliable, discreet. When I explained the situation, Jake didn't ask questions. He just said, "Give me a week." Took less than 3 days. The report was thorough. Too thorough. Photos, timestamps, locations. Lisa and Tom weren't just reconnecting over coffee. They'd been meeting in hotel rooms. Afternoon rendezvous during her so-called girls' weekends. Romantic dinners that overlapped with the nights I spent home alone, wondering why my marriage felt hollow. But the worst blow came with a timeline. Jake had tracked patterns, piecing together a chilling revelation. Lisa had been seeing Tom during both pregnancies. When Emma was born, Lisa had told me she needed space from the stress. I'd encouraged her to take those solo weekends, thinking it would help her relax. But now I saw those trips for what they really were. Even during Sophie's pregnancy, when we were supposed to be building a future together, she had found time for him. I felt sick. The life I thought I had, the family I thought we were building together, it all felt like a carefully constructed lie. A facade held together by my blind trust. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the PI's photos spread out across my desk. One in particular caught my eye, Lisa and Tom, hand in hand, walking out of a hotel. Her face lit up with the kind of smile she used to give me. A smile I hadn't seen in years. There was no more denying it. This wasn't a harmless rekindling of an old friendship. This was an affair. An ongoing, deliberate betrayal. And she'd lied to my face over and over again. When Lisa came home late that night, her hair damp from the rain, she smiled at me. The same casual smile as if nothing had changed. "How was the team event?" I asked, my voice even. She shrugged, kicking off her shoes. "Same old. You know how those things go." I wanted to throw the photos on the table. Wanted to demand answers, scream, ask her why. But I didn't. Not yet. Because the truth is, once you know, once you've seen the reality with your own eyes, the confrontation isn't for answers. It's for closure. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I let her go about her evening. Watched as she poured herself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, scrolled through her phone like it was any other night. But inside, I was done. I spent the next few days moving in silence. Observing. Gathering my own closure. Watching Lisa move through her home, wearing the mask of a faithful wife, while I now saw every crack in that facade. Emma and Sophie were blissfully unaware, or so I thought. But then one afternoon, I overheard them talking in Emma's room. "I think Mom's lying to Dad again," Emma whispered. Sophie, younger but sharper than people gave her credit for, asked about Tom. The air left my lungs. They knew. Maybe not the details, but enough. Enough to feel the shift in our family dynamics. Enough to understand that something was wrong. That hurt more than anything. My daughters deserved better than to be caught in this web of deceit. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat down at the kitchen table. Laid out the PI's report. The photos. The messages. All of it. When Lisa walked in and saw the evidence, her face drained of color. "I think it's time we had a real conversation," I said, my voice calm. Colder than I'd ever heard myself sound. She didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a crack in her composure. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mike," she said softly. "But you did," I replied. "For years." She sat down across from me, but the distance between us felt insurmountable. "I didn't know how to stop," she admitted. Tom was familiar. Safe. A piece of my old life when things felt simple. I laughed bitterly. "So you chose to revisit that life at the expense of this one." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't move me. "Not anymore. I don't have the energy to fight, Lisa. You made your choices. This conversation isn't about fixing anything. It's about acknowledging the damage." For once, she had no comeback. No deflection. She just nodded, her hands trembling slightly. In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't the dramatic blow-up I'd imagined. There were no screaming matches, no throne plates. Just a quiet, bitter acknowledgement of the truth. And that was worse. Because now I had confirmation. No more doubts. No more wondering. Lisa had betrayed me. And the life we'd built? It wasn't what I thought it was. It never had been. You always imagine you'll explode when you find out. That you'll scream, break things, demand answers. But when the time comes, it doesn't feel like that. It feels quiet. Empty. Like standing in a house after a storm, looking at the wreckage, knowing there's no point yelling at the wind. That's how I felt the morning I decided to leave. No dramatic farewell. No suitcase thrown into the car in a fit of rage. Just a slow, methodical gathering of my things. Shirts, shoes, some books. A few framed photos of my parents, back when they were still around. Nothing from Lisa. Nothing from us. It wasn't an emotional choice. It was practical. Those memories didn't belong to me anymore. Lisa didn't say a word when she saw the bags. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching me with a detached sort of resignation. Like she'd already had this conversation with herself and accepted the outcome. Maybe that hurt more than anything. No pleading. No fight. No, don't go. Just silence. I found a place near the edge of town, I said, zipping up my duffel. Month-to-month lease. Should be fine for now. She nodded, eyes cast downward. Okay. Not I'm sorry. Not please stay. Just okay. That was my answer. It was like watching the end credits roll on a movie I hadn't realized was over. When it came time to tell Emma and Sophie, I braced myself for tears. For outrage. But when we sat them down, their reactions were almost eerie. We figured, Emma said flatly. She's 15, old enough to understand more than I'd like. Sophie, 12 and always the peacemaker, gave a small, sad smile. We just want you both to be happy. Happy. What a meaningless word that felt like in that moment. They didn't cry. They didn't beg me to stay. In fact, the absence of surprise in their faces hit me harder than any outburst would have. It confirmed what I'd been afraid to admit: my role in their lives had become background noise. Not because I didn't love them. God, I love those girls more than life itself. But somewhere along the line, between Lisa's lies and my blind devotion to a broken marriage, I had become an accessory to their routine. Reliable. Predictable. Replaceable. I wanted to blame Lisa. Blame Tom. Blame anyone but myself. But deep down, I knew I'd let it happen. I'd been so focused on preserving the illusion of our family that I hadn't noticed how disconnected we'd all become. Maybe Emma and Sophie had seen through it long before I did. The drive to my new place was surreal. The further I got from home, the old home, the lighter I felt. Not free exactly. More like someone removing a heavy coat after walking through a storm. You're still soaked underneath, but at least you can breathe. The apartment was modest. One bedroom, small kitchen, no frills. The kind of place you don't make plans in. Just a stopover between lives. The landlord didn't ask questions. He probably saw guys like me all the time. I unpacked in silence. By evening, the reality started sinking in. I wasn't going back. Not for dinner. Not for bedtime stories. Not for, how was your day, honey? This was it. I sat on the worn-out couch, staring at the blank wall, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The house I'd left behind was full of memories, but this place was empty. And yet somehow that emptiness felt honest. No lies here. No pretending. The first night was the hardest. Not because I missed Lisa, I was well past that, but because of the sheer quiet. The absence of footsteps, of background chatter, of the small, mundane sounds that tell you you're not alone. I checked my phone out of habit. No messages. No missed calls. No where are you or come home. Emma and Sophie didn't text either. That stung. But what would they say, really? They were old enough to sense the fractures. Maybe they'd already made peace with it in their own way. Maybe I'd been holding on to a version of our family that only existed in my head. A couple of days passed. Still nothing. I'd wake up, go to work, come home to my little apartment, rinse and repeat. It was a simple rhythm. A lonely one, but at least it was real. Lisa didn't reach out. Neither did the girls. It was as if my departure had been pre-written in their lives and now they were just flipping to the next chapter. I kept waiting for the grief to hit me like a tidal wave. For the breakdown. The screaming into a pillow. But it never came. Instead, it was a slow, dull ache. Like a pulled muscle you forget about until you move the wrong way. One night, I drove past our old street. The house was still there, perfectly lit as if nothing had changed. Lisa's car in the driveway. Lights on in the living room. Life going on with or without me. I didn't stop. Didn't even slow down. But I felt it, that sharp, bitter twist in my chest. The realization that I was an outsider now. A footnote in a story that had already moved on. I went back to my apartment and sat in the dark. No music. No TV. Just me in the silence. And for the first time in weeks, I let it wash over me. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal, it was all still there, but muted. What remained was exhaustion. Not from the events themselves, but from the fight to hold onto something that had been slipping through my fingers for years. I thought about Emma and Sophie. About whether they'd resent me for leaving. But then I remembered their faces when I told them. The lack of shock. The quiet resignation. No, they wouldn't resent me. Maybe they even understood. Maybe they'd seen the cracks long before I did. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. But it was honest. And at least now I had nothing left to pretend. You know what's funny? When people talk about divorce or separation, they always focus on the big, loud parts. The shouting matches. The slammed doors. The "you'll regret this" ultimatums. But they never tell you about the silence. The kind of silence that hums louder than any argument. That's what I lived in now. 2 weeks had passed since I left the house. Since I walked away from Lisa, Emma, Sophie, the entire life we'd built, or thought we'd built. Every night, I'd come home to my little apartment. Every night, the silence would be waiting for me like an old friend with bad news. You don't notice how much noise fills a house until it's gone. Not the loud stuff, just the little things. The sound of Lisa's slippers shuffling into the kitchen for her nightly tea. Sophie's humming while she did homework. Emma's music leaking through her headphones, no matter how many times I told her to turn it down. Those noises had been background static in my life. Comfortable. Familiar. Now there was nothing. My phone stayed stubbornly silent. No texts from Lisa. No calls. Not even a courtesy "we need to talk" message. As if, by mutual unspoken agreement, we'd decided we were done pretending. I thought Emma or Sophie might reach out. A simple "hey, Dad" would have been enough. But days passed, and the screen stayed empty. I told myself they were caught up in their own worlds, school, friends, maybe even processing everything in their own way. Still, the silence hurt. It was a reminder of how far I'd drifted from being a central figure in their lives. How much of my identity had been wrapped up in the word father. And now, how foreign that word felt echoing in my mind. Evenings became a ritual. I'd make a half-hearted attempt at dinner, usually something out of a box. Sit at the small kitchen table that felt designed for one. Sometimes I'd flip through old photo albums. Not because I was a glutton for punishment, but because it was the only evidence that those memories existed. Funny how a picture can betray you. They capture the smile, the moment, the illusion, but they don't tell you what happened right after the flash. They don't reveal the cracks. I'd stare at a photo of Lisa and me, arms around each other at Emma's 3rd birthday, and wonder if she was already thinking about Tom back then. I'd see a family vacation at *T and catch myself asking, was this real? Or just another well-posed lie? Memories don't hit you all at once. They sneak up on you. You'll be washing dishes and suddenly remember the way Lisa used to laugh at the dumbest jokes. Or how Emma used to crawl into bed with us during thunderstorms. How Sophie once made me a lopsided Father's Day mug that somehow became my favorite. But in this apartment, those memories felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Like I was studying a stranger's scrapbook. I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, half expecting to hear Sophie's footsteps padding down the hall, or Lisa whispering into her phone on the patio. But of course, there was nothing. Just the creak of old pipes and the distant hum of the city outside my window. One night, I caught myself talking to the empty room. Not out of madness. Just habit. "Long day," I said aloud, placing my keys on the table as if Lisa were there to hear it. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't mourning Lisa. I wasn't even mourning the marriage. I was mourning the role, the structure, the illusion of being part of something bigger, of being needed. Now I was just Mike, 45, architect, recently separated, living in a one-bedroom apartment with more empty cabinets than full ones. For a moment, I thought about calling Lisa, not to rekindle anything, not even close, but to break the silence, to ask about the girls, to hear something familiar. But I didn't, because I knew what would happen. We'd exchange polite words, dance around the elephant in the room, maybe even dip into that comfortable pattern of old habits. And then, I'd hang up feeling worse than before. Better to let the silence speak. And it did. Loudly. One afternoon, as I left work, I checked my phone out of sheer reflex. Still nothing. No calls. No texts. No missed life events needing my attention. I remember sitting in my car, staring at the steering wheel, thinking, is this what it feels like to disappear? Not in a literal sense, but socially, emotionally, to fade out of the picture frame while life keeps going. Lisa's world hadn't crumbled. She was still hosting her book club, still posting those carefully curated photos on social media, still functioning. Emma was still excelling in school. Sophie was still her cheerful, artistic self. They didn't need me for that. The family I thought I was holding together had been running on autopilot long before I noticed. That was a hard pill to swallow. But, in a twisted way, it was freeing. Without the constant noise, without the daily facade, I started hearing something else. My own thoughts, my own desires, Things I hadn't paid attention to in years because I was so busy being dad and husband and provider. I realized I didn't even know what I liked anymore. I used to sketch for fun, buildings, landscapes, sometimes little comics Emma would giggle at. When was the last time I did that? Couldn't remember. So I dug out an old sketch pad from the moving box I hadn't bothered to unpack. The first lines were shaky, uncertain, but as the pencil moved, something clicked. For a few hours, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful, focused. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about Lisa or Tom or what my daughters thought of me. I was just creating. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to myself. The silence hadn't been my enemy. I'd just been afraid of what it would reveal. That night, as I turned out the lights, I caught my reflection in the window. Same face, a little more tired, a few more lines. But something was different. Not healed, but aware. And sometimes that's the first step. Months passed. The silence between Lisa and me stretched on, no longer sharp, just empty. One evening, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was thin, frayed at the edges. Mike, I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious. She told me Tom was sick. Kidney failure. Needed a transplant. She didn't ask outright, but the implication was clear. She was hoping I'd step in. I let her finish her plea, then asked the only question that mattered. Why me, Lisa? There was a pause. Because you're still family. That word used to mean something. Now it felt hollow. I told her no. Firmly.